Hi, Scorpio, Sun and Rising. Welcome to your October 2023 Astro Update. It's Raina here. So, this is a month of eclipses, and that is very interesting. Also, your ruler, Pluto, goes direct in the month of October. So, that's another significant thing, not to mention your solar return. For those of you who are born in either October or November, when the sun goes into Scorpio on the 23rd of the month, that is your solar return period. And so happy birthday to those of you who are born in October, the early ones. And, this is a time of new beginnings. Because of that. But also there is some 12th house stuff that's going to definitely affect you. Speaking of which, on the 4th of the month, Mercury goes into Libra, and that is your 12th house. So the sun is in your 12th house as the month begins. And Mercury goes here on the 4th. Mercury in the 12th house can give a psychic influence to a person because of the rulership of the 12th of Neptune in astrology and Pisces, the sign that it rules. So it's really all about past lives, the dream state, and it can sometimes people can feel maybe, I don't know if uneasy is the right word, but there can be vague anxieties. When Mercury is in the 12th, if the person, I think this is more if a person doesn't realize where their transits are, because once you realize these things, you can kind of like call them out and say, oh, because they're going to feel irrational. The 12th house is irrational because it's not of this world. It's otherworldly. So it's not like based on, the here and now and the groundedness angle. It's much more about the supernatural and things that have happened before that, this is the unconscious mind. So sometimes people, I have experienced this myself where you're just walking down the street and it's like you look at something and you feel like maybe you see a person, you feel like you know them. I guess that's what deja vu is. It's like you feel like you've known someone before. That's why I say sometimes this can be past life recall, but there's other things too. I don't know if anybody's had this experience, but this is what I've had recently in the last year or so, where I'm somewhere on the weekend kind of adventuring, usually like in the city or something, not, nowhere in a rural area, but it doesn't really make a difference. And I feel like I have already walked down that street, or and it's not because I have done it, it's because it's almost like there was some kind of a prelude to that experience that maybe I experienced in an astral state or something like that. And I can't really articulate it very well, but it's like deja vu, but I really feel like I experienced it in another dimension. So anyway, during this time, and it's a very brief time, it's just a few weeks, just expect to be more psychic and less linear. On the 8th, Venus goes into Virgo. This is a friendly angle called a sextile. And this means that Venus is going into that 11th house, which is very social. This is the house of the collective. It's the house of gains. So that could have a financial benefit because Venus can be connected to money. And so this could indicate an increase in your profits or your salary. As a matter of fact, when Venus was in Leo, that's where the retrograde was in your 10th house of career. So there might have been some kind of salary negotiations or really within yourself thinking about how much money plays a part in your choice of career, because Venus can be your values, and you might have felt like you were selling yourself short in terms of, yeah, maybe in some cases you feel it was your moral obligation to ask for more money. But in other cases, what I was trying to say was the type of work you were doing versus whether that was really for you or not. So Venus in the 11th house, you can meet someone. If you're single, you can find somebody through your friends that turns into like some kind of a love relationship. That's just one example. This can help you. Maybe you attract money, and this is part of your long range goals, because the 11th house are your hopes and wishes. So money can feature into being able to realize some of these dreams. There's something that you wanted to do, but you didn't have the money for, and maybe now you do. On the 10th, Pluto goes direct, the 1010 portal. And this is significant, like I said, because Venus is your ruler, but also because Pluto is in your third house. It went back into Capricorn. It briefly went into Aquarius. Now it's back in Capricorn. So that's the house of the mind. There is something, maybe, I don't know if any of you started meditating in the past few months. I can't remember when Pluto went retrograde. It might have been May, because I think it retrogrades for 5 months at a time. And this is an outer planet, so it's not so much, the sign it's in and all of that, but the house it's in, it definitely is important to look at that, because it can indicate the transformation of this area of life. Now, since it went back into Capricorn, it really, it's not going to be here that long, because it was at a later degree. But the point is that it is going to go back into Capricorn in 2024. And then it's supposed to be November, sometime in November of 2024, when it goes back into Aquarius the second time and stays there for 20 years. And that will be your fourth house of home and family. So that'll be I was going to say, that's going to be a doozy for Scorpios, because this is the house of home and family, and also childhood. So when Pluto is in the fourth house, it really excavates your childhood and gets to the bottom of things. If you've had issues, stemming from childhood. In the third house, and it can be your mother, some people say the father is connected to the fourth house. To me, it's the mother. And the third house can be your siblings, as well as aunts, uncles, and cousins, not to mention neighbors, but focusing on family specifically, there may be some things that you have to work out with these people. So if you have recently, and when I say recently, I mean in the past 15 years or so, since Pluto went into Capricorn, have power struggles with siblings, for whatever reason, in the past few months, you may have brought it back to yourself, which is really great. So actually, Pluto retrogrades are really great, because ultimately we have to bring it back to ourselves. Sometimes other people can see the error of their ways, sometimes they can't. But always we have to, um, decide what we're going to do. It's not about blaming ourselves for somebody else's bad behavior necessarily, but our part in the dance. If you are, for instance, if you have like an unhealthy interactions or dynamic with your family, and I'm speaking specifically of your family of origin, and you always felt like the black sheep, for instance. When you bring it back to yourself, you're saying, okay, well, why am I here? Why do I feel drawn to remain in this situation? I have free will. I don't have to do this. I'm choosing to in every moment. And so why am I? And sometimes a person realizes that there is codependency there, that they are taking responsibility for other people's feelings if they were to avoid that situation. And, another part of this too is, and this is true for any type of situation where you may find yourself not wanting to participate anymore. And if somebody says, how come you're not coming to the family reunions? A lot of people would probably lie and say, well, I'm really busy. I'm working a lot. But what if somebody said, I really feel uncomfortable because I have been doing some inner work and I realize that I don't like the way that I am treated by the family, and I don't want to participate in this anymore because I can't control other people. In other words, being very straightforward about how they're feeling. And so these kinds of things are what you have been dealing with. And now Pluto's going direct, and there could be outward, I was going to say events. I wouldn't be surprised if there is something very, what's the word? Something that happens that's very significant that has to do with your home situation. Because since Pluto is going direct and is only going to be here for, I don't know exactly how long, but it can't be too long. It might indicate that something in that area will be, there will be movement in that area. So it depends on your particular situation with your family. And another thing that can occur too is something to do with real estate and maybe even empowerment, even wealth. Pluto can confer wealth, and in the fourth house, wealth by real estate might be the case. I wouldn't be surprised too if you could inherit property from the death of someone, maybe in your family. It's possible too that this is already a done deal, that this was already in the works, and that because Pluto has been retrograde, there has been some kind of, kind of fight or, contesting of this property other people wanted or something like that. So yeah, I mean, there could be some good things that come of that as well. On the 12th, Mars goes into your sign. Oh boy. That's really, because, Mars in Scorpio is pretty fierce. When Mars goes into your first house, don't be surprised if you feel more energetic. But this could be to the point where you want to start a new exercise regimen. Because you just have, I was going to say you have ants in your pants, but you just have that hyperactive tendency. Or we could just say energetic. this can make you more confident, but it can make you downright cocky. And a couple of days after this, we have the first eclipse in Libra of this pair of eclipses with Aries. And this is a solar eclipse, and it's at 21 degrees of Libra. I have 21 degrees, but I think it's actually closer to 22 degrees. And so Libra, again, because you have Mercury and the sun there, is the 12th house. So a solar eclipse is when the sun and moon are in conjunction. So the moon is also in that 12th house. And it's a very powerful new moon. In the 12th house, it's always kind of weird because this is the last house. And of course, it's an eternal cycle, but it can mean that there is something new that is being birthed in this area of spirituality. So for some Scorpios, who knows, maybe there is some kind of new spiritual belief that you're getting involved in, or group that you're belonging to, or, like organization, methodology, all of that good stuff. And if you have been dealing with any kind of negative patterns or habits, the 12th house is the house of addictions, the house of self-undoing, all these things that people do that are very, like that really hurt themselves. So using the example, for instance, of an addiction, you may be celebrating sobriety and feeling that, with the solar eclipse, I think of like the phoenix rising from the ashes, even though I always say that for your house, the 8th house, because that's the house of transformation. But there are some similarities because the 12th house is also a water house. So just like the 8th house. So there may be some new beginnings on a very subtle level and this is a hidden house. So you might be like really finding a new spiritual inspiration these days. On the 22nd, Mercury goes into your sign, and that aligns you with your sense of self, makes you more consistent with your image, instead of, when it's in the 12th and you're like, God knows what you're doing, channeling or something like that. On the 23rd, the sun goes into your sign as well. So here you have, Mars there, Mercury there, the sun there. These are all dynamic forces, and you should feel more confident and more like yourself. When the sun goes into your sign, that means that the sun has been in the 12th house and it's been hibernating, and now it's coming back into that first house. And, kind of like lighting up your personality, so to speak. And then on the 28th, we have a lunar eclipse at 5 degrees of Taurus. This is your opposite sign, Scorpio, as you probably know. So the lunar eclipse occurs in your 7th house of committed partnership, although some of you, maybe most of you, might have it in your 6th house of work and health. If so, if it's in your 6th house, look to major shakeups with your job or your daily schedule. You may be changing. It may not be that you leave your job, but that you have a different schedule. And so that really affects your lifestyle. Maybe you have to commute longer. Maybe you are going to work 4 days instead of 5 days, or you're going to work a second shift instead of the first one, and you don't have to be there until noon. There's all kinds of possibilities. But for the rest of you, this will fall in your 7th house. This is the house of committed partnership. And a lunar eclipse can be a blessing for a bad relationship that you find it hard to let go of because it can do all the heavy lifting for you. Scorpio is a fixed sign, a fixed water sign. So your emotions run deep, but they also run very tenaciously. It's very hard for you to let go of someone once you have fallen in love with them, feel comfortable with them. And even though Scorpio is terrified of being abandoned or cheated on, even if you were cheated on, I could see a Scorpio person still wanting to make it work, because the prospect of just like starting anew, that might even be more daunting than accepting a continuing relationship with someone who betrayed you. But in some cases, that's not the right decision to make. And so you may come to that understanding and therefore, admit that you have to move on. And it would be reluctantly admitting, and I'm sure, but you would admit it nonetheless. And the lunar eclipse allows you to let go. A lunar eclipse is like something coming to the breaking point and then just the release. In some cases, it can be the blossoming of something. This is at a major level, and it's karmic, or we could say it's fated, meaning that these changes were destined to happen. They're not things that if something, comes into your life or leaves your life and you're not quite sure about it, if you trust in the universe that this is divine timing, it will be very helpful. You may have the tendency, Scorpio, to just resist something that is changing, like, for instance, a relationship. And one of the things that can happen is that people can even have a situation where maybe you have been resisting committing to someone, and the release is letting go of that resistance and then saying, yes, I commit, because that's what the seventh house can be about. And, it doesn't sound like the typical Scorpio person who would be afraid to commit, but I'm sure that they are out there. There are always outliers. And so it can be, that's what's so funny about these types of transits, is that sometimes the effects can be like seemingly two opposing things, like two extremes, and so, yeah. So this is very powerful, and the first lunar eclipse, the last eclipse in that series from the last 2 years of Taurus and Scorpio. And that means that this cycle is coming to an end. We already have had eclipses in Aries and Libra for the new cycle that has just begun, but now we're putting these to bed. So this area of partnership and the area of the individual are both being, we're moving on from those. For you, I shouldn't say we, I'm not a Scorpio, but you're moving on from those areas being triggered. All right, Scorpio, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a personal reading, I'm promoting my double readings, which are, actually now I have a triple reading. They're like full-length readings that I put together in a package so that you can receive a discount by purchasing more than one at the same time. I have a deep dive reading, which is a double astrology-based reading, an hour of natal chart analysis, an hour of transits for the upcoming 12 months for a special price, and that's great for you during the season of your birthday because then you can look ahead at the coming year, but also get a natal chart interpretation that, if you've never had one done, that gets you familiar with your chart and some of the things that are going on just that you came into this lifetime with. And then I have my latest one is combining those two astrological readings and a full-length tarot reading, and that's called The Whole Enchilada. And you can find out more information about those package readings as well as the standalone readings at the link below. I'm at RadioMoonAstrology.com. Thank you for listening. Bye.